Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good friend, Ty Franck. Hello, Ty Franck.
Hey, man. I like when your face is that close to the camera because it makes your head look gigantic.
It's not the camera that makes my head gigantic. It's my head that makes my head look gigantic. Today we're going to be talking about is our dear friend, Jacob Mundell, and guest of the show. Say hello,
Whoop,
Jacob.
whoop, whoop. Hi, thank you so much for having me. This was on my list for a long time, and I'm glad it's finally happening.
So are we going to do talking about Eric and his journey through the season and that thing? Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Going all the way back to the churn.
Yeah.
Going all back to the churn. Well, first, actually, my question is to kind of kick this off to Ty. When did you first conceive of Amos's friend Jacob, and what was the purpose that it served in your story?
Well, Jacob is a real person. I didn't conceive of him, but the character of Eric.
Not that we know of.
Yeah. So
I don't know. What's your mom's name?
You tell me.
I never. When did you create Jacob? It's like Jacob didn't exist before Ty created him. Ty is the creator.
We need a one-handed guy from Chicago.
Yeah, I did a very good job with Jacob. I think he's a very well-rounded character, a very interesting character that I came up with. No, it was when we were writing the churn. So we knew what the basic plot of the churn was, how Amos gets driven off the planet. It makes the choice to do what he does and gets driven off the planet. We knew that there had to be two important characters in his life. One was Lydia, the woman who raised him, a sort of mother figure. And then the other important character had to be the friend he was willing to basically give up his life for. And that's where Eric came from, is figuring out what is the kind of person that Amos is going to latch onto emotionally. And because we know Amos is stunted, we know Amos has attachment disorder and is unable to create loving relationships and friendly relationships. It's very difficult for him. So it had to be somebody he knew his whole life, because Amos has this very powerful protective instinct because of the abuse he suffered as a child. So we knew it had to be somebody that would, to some degree, trigger Amos's protective instincts. And that's where Eric's various disabilities came from, is that, he's not a person who can win a street fight. He's not a person who can, survive with his fists. But he's brilliant. He's a genius. And so Amos recognizes that the two of them kind of form a complete person together, that he's got this genius friend who can tell him what he should be doing. And Amos has the physicality to protect his friend from the hard streets that they live on. That's sort of where the idea came from.
It's interesting to me because what I got from the churn or reading the churn is Eric was the best friend that Amos didn't know he had.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Lydia pointed that out.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought that was a really telling moment when she's saying, basically pointing out that this is a good friend of yours and you don't just go off and kill your friend. And if it was, there was a point when he gets back to camp in Baltimore with orders to kill Eric when he's just walking by, and she's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, I just got to take care of something real quick." And this is somebody that's, his best friend, and she has to tell him about that. And then that switches his whole mindset going forward.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that's one of the most interesting things about these two characters' relationship to me, is because I knew that on that first day of set, we were doing the scene that I auditioned with, and I knew that, like, above all, I was excited to see Amos again. I was like, where has this guy been? What has he been doing? And I knew that we were best friends in a way, but I was also, there was this troubling, puzzling thing where you were also not happy to be back on Earth. And he wanted to, like, he couldn't wait to get out of that office. Like, Eric tried to engage him a little bit, and Amos stole his liquor and, like, pieced out as soon as he could. And so it's not like I doubt their friendship, but there was this unsatisfying thing for me playing Eric in that moment of, like, why? I know this guy's my brother. Like, why is he, what is he not telling me, or why is he blowing me off? And there's a lot of reasons why Amos doesn't want to be on Earth anymore.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Ty, but in that scene, that first scene where we see each other again, well, first of all, you said if I come back, you're going to kill me. I mean,
That too.
So it wasn't like
okay, fair.
It wasn't like you were exactly like wanting to, befriend. But what I kind of understood from that scene is that we existed in a time, our friendship existed in a time where, like Ty was describing, we kind of complete each other, and I was your protector in a way. But part of what you've achieved and part of the power that you've accumulated is about perception, right? And having your protector, having somebody that reminds you of a time when you were inferior, you could be a threat to you within this kingdom and this world that you created. And also there is a bit suspicion of like, why are you back? And what is your role in this thing? And so that was a really complex, nuanced scene where in one hand, you're happy to see your brother that's back. You wanted a little bit of nostalgia of bringing up an old story, but there was that suspicion of like, are you here to kill me? And also, I've built something here. I'm not the person that I used to be, and you need to acknowledge that, and you can't destroy the illusion around it.
Yeah, it's kind of like wanting to satisfy a relationship that actually stopped existing a long time ago and can't exist right now because it's dangerous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would say that in addition to all the stuff Wes said, which all of that I think is true, and actually that's an interesting analysis that part of what Amos is doing is I don't want to screw up your thing, Eric. Me being here could potentially screw up your thing, and I don't want to do that. So in that way, he's sort of like sacrificing himself for his friend again. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, one of the things we always told all the writers when writing for Amos is almost utterly lacking in sentimentality. He has picked up and moved and left everything behind more than once in his life. So whatever instinct people have to cling to the past, Amos just doesn't have that. And he loves Eric in the way that Amos can love somebody. But that's also in the past. It's a thing of the past, and he doesn't need to bring it with him, right? And so he shows up. He likes seeing Eric. Like, hey, I like that you are successful. I like that you're still alive. That makes me happy that you have succeeded and achieved after I left. But I don't need to stay and be part of it. We don't need to like reminisce about it, And when Eric does his reminiscing thing, hey, remember when we did this? Amos says, I'll never forget that. But that's all he says about it is like, he doesn't also begin reminiscing. He just says, yeah, I do remember the thing you're saying, and I will never forget that thing. And I'm leaving now.
Mm-hmm. Ty, whatever happened, there was a moment where we were going to do the audio version of the churn, and you and Daniel were talking to me about voicing that. Whatever happened with that?
Yeah, I would still love to do that. That's we would have to talk to our audiobook publisher. Mm-hmm. So the thing with the churn is a complicated story from an audio perspective, because Jefferson Mays does all of our audiobooks, and he does almost all of our audio short stories and novellas. Mm-hmm. But the churn was done by somebody else and had to be re-recorded with Jefferson Mays. Uh-huh. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe that's true. So going to the publisher and said, hey, remember when you re-recorded the churn? How about we re-record the churn again? Is a little tricky, but I would love to do that at some point. If the publisher ever shows any interest in doing that, and what I'd love to do for the churn, if they're willing to do this, is have multiple audio actors. We could have Jacob come in and record Eric. We could have actress come in and record Lydia. We could have you doing Amos or Timmy, and we could have somebody come in and record for Burton, and then have maybe even somebody recording as the narrator. That would be fun to do, but it's expensive, of course. So I don't know what the hunger for that is. Jacob is really expensive.
I am here for it. I am not expensive. I'm not getting work anywhere else right now. I spend 99% of my time getting rejected by casting directors. So I would love to do the churn. My only other option is to capitalize on what claim I have to Eric in The Expanse is if in 50 years I'm old enough to play the Eric in Oberon. So that would be cool. That would be very cool. Yeah. And we could do that without you being 50 years older. Yeah, you could do it without me. Please don't.
No. I'm not saying without you. I'm saying there's there's makeup and visual effects stuff we could do.
Oh yeah.
To age you up for that. Yeah.
Killer.
So that's not that hard.
We have that moment of first meeting, but I do like, there's something really interesting in this episode where we realize that, okay, we need each other. I come back, we have that conversation of like, I need you, you need me. This is what we're going to have to do. I know where this ship is. We can work together to do it. And so we come back together. And that old dynamic starts to play out again, but you're a new person. You have a new sense of power and agency that you didn't have before. And there's a moment of, there's a little subtleties of constant reminders of like, hey, I'm a fucking boss now, and it's kind of that,
Yeah.
it's kind of that thing as we're going in. And it's like, it's that friend, that you knew in high school, and you see him and he's like, hey, I'm tough now. I'm a tough guy, like,
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, I've noticed that human psychology, like I was very insecure in high school. Obviously, still am, just a little bit less so. But as I've leveled up in life, I have noticed sometimes you meet somebody from 20 years ago who, in retrospect, didn't treat you very well. And I'm beyond that, but I've noticed how easy sometimes it is to put on an old pair of pants and slip right back into dynamics, despite all the progress you've made in life. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just it's a thing about the human psyche, is it reverts to habits and patterns.
It's why people have a hard time standing up to their parents.
Yo, that's a real thing you just said.
Yeah, even when a person has become very self-actualized and owning their power and very independent, and you go back and you confront your parents and they treat you like a little kid, and there's a part of your brain that wants to go back to little kid mode. Like, yes, mom, I'll do what you said. And it's very hard to sort of fight that. And I think, so Daniel, he has a saying, he says a lot that humans peg to first experiences. So the first time you experience something, your brain kind of thinks that's the way that thing works from then on. So if you were a kid in the formative part of your personality and everybody treated you like shit, there is a part of your brain that thinks people will treat me like shit. And so when you get around those people, and I deserve it, and when you get around those people, and if they start treating you like shit, your brain just goes into, oh, right, I'm supposed to play the victim here. And it's very hard to control that instinct. Very hard.
If you're treated like shit at an early age, the eternal dialogue underneath is, I'm unlovable. And if somebody feels unlovable at their core, that's where a lot of dysfunction manifests itself in later life, because that never leaves them. That, it's like if you were raised poor, that fear of being poor never leaves you. And, I think that the Expanse in this story of Jacob and Amos explores a lot of that, because, you can be in a situation where you've moved so far away from pain that you had in your childhood, and one comment, one thing could just bring it all back like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And, you know it because there's moments where you're irrationally angry and rageful that comes out of nowhere, and you're like, where the fuck did this come from? And it's connected to some deep shit that happened in the past.
That's not to say that Amos is like abusing Eric in this moment on the top of that cold hospital school, but it is like, for a man who's used to being the boss now and has calcified the habits of being in charge, and who has convinced himself that the right way to wait out this apocalypse is to collect supplies and stay put, like, Amos might be the person to convince him otherwise, because he's got those old, connections to when Eric was less used to throwing his weight around.
Well, and I would say, in addition to that, Eric does not have attachment disorder the way Amos does. Eric actually does love people and has human connection. And so in that moment, he is playing the boss, and he is the boss, but the person who's standing there trying to convince him of something is somebody he loves. And all of the old feelings are going to come flooding back. Of course they are. Of, this was my protector. This was my friend. This guy gave up his life to save me. You get it used to the habit, when you're the boss, you get used, there's a habit of being the boss, right? You put on the suit, and it's almost like putting on your armor in the morning, and you go into work and you walk around, and there is a air that you want to project of, I am the boss, right? And Eric is still projecting that because he's been doing that for 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath that is still, could I have this guy thrown off the roof? Of course I could. I got 20 guys down there with guns right now who will come charging up if I call. But it's Amos. It's my childhood friend, and you know, it creates a complicated emotional dynamic.
And that eternal conflict is, to me, was clear in your performance, because the complicatedness, nuanced of somebody that you care about and that you're happy to see, but also triggers all those feelings of inadequacy and you know, being a victim when you were younger. And so like having to overcome that. So you kind of slip out of like, I will fucking kill you, Amos. If you come back, I'm going to kill you, to like, remember that time we were hanging out, you know? And so like that kind of shifting back and forth, that's what we do in life, you know? Like sometimes when I get together with my buddies that I grew up with, you know, it's like, hey, let's go steal a car. We're like, no, we don't do that, you know? Like, you know?
No, you don't get it. I'm king of the small pond now. I can do this. Let's go do this. Well, and Ty, you know, this was never explicitly said, so this might have been an invention of this character that I used, that I just connected with. But I always thought that like Eric was probably a little bit fascinated with the fact that Amos got out. Like, Eric is the king of the pond now, but he's the king of a little pond, and Amos moved to a bigger pond. And if I understand the universe you created well enough, like, that never fucking happens, especially for an unregistered person. You don't get out of Baltimore. And I had a fake identity in the churn. I had a golden ticket off the planet. Maybe I thought I would use it myself if the real Amos Burton didn't need it, but I gave it to Timmy, and he got out, and he had this cowboy adventure life that I've always kind of wondered, like, oh, that could have been me. And so I look up to him. I'm like, what the hell happened to you out there? He must know more than me. He's moved on to bigger ponds.
I agree with you 100% on that. So Amos had a certain mystique for Eric when they were kids, because Amos was the tough kid. Amos was the kid that nobody picked on. And so that comes with some mystique. You know, when you're the one who gets picked on and your friend never gets picked on, it's like, oh, he must be special in some way, right? Yep. And you're right. He goes and he flies off and he has galaxy-spanning adventures, and he's like on the news, and you know, he's like this guy, and you're like, holy shit, right? But what we get to see the outworking of that. When Eric gets his chance to leave, he does. And that, you know, the story Oberon, you know, Eric goes, he goes and he has his galaxy-spanning adventure. He goes to a different world. He becomes a crime boss on that world. Yep. He does what he knows. You know, I mean, he has a skill set. That's the skill set he knows how to use. But he does eventually do that. And I think part of why when we see Eric in Oberon, he's so much more centered in himself. He's so much more confident. He's all of those past insecurities have kind of been left behind now.
Because the Eric on Baltimore, he's a little bit of a fraud. He's doing what he knows, but he's like, I need to kill anyone who doubts me, because because they know the truth, which is that I know I'm a fraud. Like I'm making everything up every day. And
you know, it's the imposter syndrome that Amos can see right through, that Eric has. But what's interesting about Amos getting out of Baltimore and off the planet, it's because of you. It's because you were the one that granted me that ticket.
Twice.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, you know, there's a little bit of like, you saved my life and I care about you, and I'm going to get you out of here because I know you're a direct threat. I know that you just killed somebody that was very dangerous and had a lot of friends, but there's also that you're on the cops of the radar and all that stuff. So you gifted me with that out of love and affection. And, you know, I take that and I come back. That's what's great about the relationship, is it's so complicated. You know, it's so nuanced between us. Ty, can you go a little bit more into the future of Jacob on that planet?
So there's a novella, Oberon, which is about the planet Oberon. And the story is actually about, so in the later books, there's a planet Laconia, which we show at the end of the show, of the TV show, that is founded by these sort of Martian renegades that becomes the seat of a new empire in this human-occupied galaxy. And they send governors. Every planet in the ring space, you know, all those 1,300 worlds, they send governors to them from Laconia to enforce Laconian rule. And the story is about one of those governors going to the planet Oberon and butting heads with the criminal element on that planet. And it turns out that the leader of the criminal element on Oberon is our old friend Eric, who is now older, wiser, much more sort of secure in his power, and is not about to knuckle under to some new, fascist authority figure that just shows up and declares he's in charge. Eric's like, yeah, maybe you're in charge, or maybe shit is going to keep going the way it has been going, and you're going to fall into our system rather than us knuckling under your system. And that is the back and forth of that story is Eric, the crime boss, going, we have a way of doing things here that we like, and we're not just going to give in. And this governor from this fascist authoritarian empire trying to enforce his will on this world, and the battle between the two of them.
Well, and I never thought of it the way you just said it, but yeah, like he's over it. He's had his adventures, and now we can relax a little bit and be more comfortable. Like, I relate to that as an actor, just because when casting directors can smell your desperation to get a job, they're like, no, thank you. So you almost have to not care about a role to get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you've been through, the ring a lot, like Eric has finally had his adventures. Now he becomes really good at his job.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of my favorite things about that story and about Eric in that story is that the one regret that Eric has is giving up the thing that he realizes made him different and special. Because one of the things that Eric does in Oberon is he has his small shriveled arm, which he had, since childhood. He has that replaced with a prosthetic arm.
And he hates it.
Which has all these awesome abilities, and it's like strong and it's fast.
It
and he
catches a bullet, or it grabs a gun. It grabs a gun out of someone's hand.
At one point, it protects him from being shot. So it's like this awesome display of wealth and power to have this amazing appendage. And at the same time, Eric's like, it's bullshit. I should have kept who I was. I should have kept being the person I was. And I love that about him. That's my favorite thing.
And that tracks actually all the way from The Office, when Wes first walked into my office on the 80th floor. Breck said this was intentional. I think it's brilliant if it is. That office is a dragon's hoard because it's full of stuff that he can't use. He's got one hand and a limb. He can't. There's motorcycles in that office. There's catcher's mitts and baseballs.
There's a pool table.
It's literally all this stuff that I have known all of my life I can't do, but he owns them, and he hauled them up to the 80th floor to show off his wealth.
Yep. Yeah. A dragon's hoard is a great description.
It's things that are rare that you can't make use of. Virgins and gold.
Yep.
I never heard of this novella. When did this come out? And Jacob, did you read this in your preparation? Oh, it just came. Oh, it recently came out.
No, a few years ago.
Oh, a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a slow reader. I would have loved to brag to all the fans and say, yeah, I read every book, but I did the audiobooks. Like, as soon as I got cast, they rushed me a PDF of The Churn. And I just bought the audiobook and listened to that while I was grocery shopping and closing down my life to fly to Toronto. And I listened to all of book 5 on audio, and I listened to all of Oberon on audio. Not that Oberon would inform my performance, but any source material is useful.
And how did you first hear about The Expanse? Like, did you know of the show before you put yourself on tape for it?
I watched it and I liked it. I wasn't a diehard fan. I was a little bit behind when I got cast. Like, I actually had to finish up season 3, and then they gave me pre-release privileges to season 4 before it came out. So I caught up on like the last half of season 3 and 4. But I watched it. I'm a big sci-fi guy, like Star Wars, Star Trek, Babylon, Battlestar Galactica, spaceships, pew-pews, mew-mews. This was like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a background Jedi in a Star Wars film or something. And this was my chance. I'm a sci-fi nerd who got to be in a sci-fi show, and I got to sit in a chair and push boop and beep buttons, and it was,
and you got to be on one of the nerdiest sci-fi shows. So, yeah, we're sci-fi 4 nerds. So, and you get to sit on the spaceship. You got to press the the fusion reaction button that blows up the house. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got memes made out of me, and I love it. It's like the fuck this moment.
Yeah.
The hard times all around, I guess. Well, whatever. I mean, you guys have experienced this 10 times over, but it's a unique party to be a sci-fi nerd who then gets to be in a sci-fi show and can give other sci-fi nerds the privilege of talking about this stuff that we all like.
I think I've seen some memes of you calling Nadine princess.
Oh,
you
really?
call her princess a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah. That was in episode 7 on top of that rooftop.
Yep.
There should be a meme what was that line that just I couldn't stop laughing during the scene when like there was like some
yeah.
Fuck off. We're not here to not here
to evacuate you or give you anything, so fuck off.
Fuck off.
the first time I heard that because you read it in the script but you don't see you don't see it in real life, and I wish I can remember the actress's name, but she was so terrific. She came and she was so vulnerable. The
sweetest little old lady. So sweet.
And she was so vulnerable and she had such a great performance and there was tears pooling in her eyes and I was doing her thing and I was like swept up and like wanting to help her and her. And I forgot about Jacob's line. And he goes, "We're not giving you anything, so fuck off." And
they could not have cast more of a sweet little gingerbread cookie of a person to be that woman that I yell at. And I that was one of my favorite lines, was yelling at her to fuck off.
What's that say about you, Jacob? You really love screaming at a grandma?
It's not real. It's all fun.
To back your point up, Wes, a big part of what makes that line so funny in that moment is Jacob's performance. Because there's a way to deliver that line where you just kind of throw it away. Mm-hmm. That isn't that. And Jacob elected to go like full crank the knob to 10.
He leans in.
He leans in. Yeah. And that's what made it awesome.
And I'm surprised that my mouth and my articulators were working that well as they did, because it was so cold. I was like, I was practicing my lines before takes, going, "We're not here to give you so we're not," but it was.
So Wes told a story about you. Last week. Wes told
and I have a slight
about
correction to that story. I listened to the last episode.
Okay,
go ahead.
Tell it.
I didn't say I'm barely hanging on, man. What I said was I am at the end of my fucking rope.
That was the hardest I laughed on set because I was so caught off guard by it. Because we were doing this, I mean, it was so cold and we're at the end of this thing and I see Jacob hunched over here and I was like, "How you holding up, man?" He's like, "I'm at the end of my fucking rope, man." It was like, and it truly believed it. And I was like, that we should have filmed that. That was a great performance.
I mean, all of it was legal, all of it was above board, but like my first time in on set, this was the biggest job of my career so far, and it was a big first job. I mean, let's make him do 15-hour days overnight outside in winter in Canada, and it's a gunfight. And it was a very extreme job. I am so thankful for the experience, but when you approached me, I was 15 minutes away from being very unprofessional. I was.
Well, what's interesting is that the Expanse was a particularly tough job. We never had money, we never had time, and I'm working on something now where there was, it was, the other day, like we were going late, not intense, it wasn't too late, and it wasn't like Fratter Day. And as we were working, I just kind of see people getting ruffled or like crew and everything. And it's like, that's how you know a crew is used to the good life, because it's like, we might go over it. It's like, oh, what? This was every day on the Expanse. And there's just like, I would kind of be like, what, why is everybody, what's going on? Was there like something happening? And they're like, it's fucking, we're 1 hour over. And I'm like, 1 hour over?
Yeah.
That's like, that's par for the course on the Expanse.
Of course we are. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I will say that, despite being accustomed to going over, I never beat you, Wes. You, as soon as the end of day was called, you were in a goddamn car, like you back to base camp, and I would like focus on doing my job well, but I would like keep myself ready to jump into a car. I was like, one day, just one, I want to beat Wes to base camp, and you were always the first. You were like they called end of day and you were already in your street clothes at base camp. It was impressive how quickly you would get home.
That actually was frustrating because there were times when Wes and I would be chatting on set and he'd go, "Hey, I got something I need to talk to you about." When they grab me when they cut and we'll go talk. And I think he would forget that he said that because I'd be like, "Hey, where's Wes? He wanted me to talk to him about something." They're like, "Oh, he's at base camp. He's going home." I'm like, "What the fuck, dude?"
Well, that's par for the course because number one, I usually forget things, and number two, that comes with experience because you got to keep that battery charged. And as soon as you're wrapped, you need to get back and get recharged for the next day, especially working on something like Expanse, because especially when you're working nights, if you don't go get the proper amount of turnaround, your battery will start to go and your performance will start to suffer. So you got to get good at conserving energy when that energy happens. When you work on cush jobs or, projects where they shoot like a quarter page a day, you get to more social, you get to hang out, and you don't get really as good at conserving your energy. But if you're working on something where you got to conserve your energy, when they call wrap, you need to get the fuck out of there.
Which I'm fine with, and you should conserve your battery. Just don't tell me to wait for you after wrap.
Well, that's particularly
because I'm waiting. I'm waiting for Wes.
Well, that's particularly fucked up because you got to recharge your battery too. So you're staying late because you want to talk to somebody. And I'm like, sorry, dude, I got to go recharge my battery. So, yeah, I apologize about that.
We were talking about dragon hordes and nerd stuff and being a nerd. Y'all sent me away from Toronto with so much swag. And I've had a lot of fun, like auctioning it out, giving like doing giveaways, giving it to fans, like doing fan interaction stuff. But the one thing I'm keeping forever is is the tequila bottle.
Oh yeah,
that's cool. That's nice. Really fucking cool.
I've got it, and it'll stay here forever. And these are the rock glasses they gave us for season 6. I wasn't in season 6, and y'all gave me set gifts from season 6. That was so sweet.
Yeah, they're real sweet crew. Speaking of the tequila, I really like the last scene that Jacob and I had together where I actually dropped the bottle. Booze? Yeah, where I dropped the booze. But I like that scene because I think that's the beginning of Jacob or Eric's maturity. That's the beginning of we've been through this thing together. You've come to the other side and and before it was almost like a con for you, it was almost something that you didn't truly believe in. And then after it's like, no, I have agency. This is something that I can do. And, Amos, we should go off and, start this thing. And I kind of say, look, I have a family, I have this other thing that's important to me. But when you leave, it sounds like that's the beginning of the Jacob that we see in Oberon.
Well, there's a take that didn't make it into 510 where I see you off. I forget if we hug or not, but Breck told me, all right, smile for Amos, give him a face that says, I'll be okay. And then when he leaves, the camera zoomed in on me, and then my face would fall it's not going to be okay. I don't know what to do. I'm on my own now. And it, obviously stuff gets cut, but I was always interested in that. Okay, now Amos is gone, and I'm on Luna with dwindled cash and a couple of goons. And we gotta start making it work.
Well, I know why Narain cut that. I know why he did, and the reason is
your performance.
Yeah. That's why a lot of my stuff gets cut.
It's actually it was Wes's performance walking away. It was terrible. Learn how to walk like a human, weirdo. No, the reason he did is because that is a fantastic scene if we're then going to follow it up by showing more of your story.
Oh, but he doesn't come back.
If we're not going to show more of your story, then it feels like a dropped thread.
Mm-hmm.
So we end it where Eric is getting ready to go off on his adventure. Amos is getting ready to go off on his adventure. They have their parting of the ways. They're still friends. They still love each other, but they have to go their different ways. And then that's the end. If we go past that, we're telling the audience, there's more Jacob story. There's more Eric story coming. I'm stealing from Wes now, calling your character by your name. There's more Eric story coming. It's a hint of the future that we're not going to actually deliver.
Exactly.
So yeah, that is the reason why.
Breck kept on saying stuff like, "Hey, you want to come back? You want to recur? You want to come back and hang out with us some more?" And I was like, "I know my character's not in book 6, dude. Like, don't give an actor hope, man. Like this."
Yeah, why was Breck saying that? That's kind of a dick
what
move.
A cruel thing. Like, what was he?
Yeah, I'm gonna next time I talk to Breck, I'm gonna yell at him.
I'm wise enough in this industry to know not to emotionally invest in comments like that, but I could tell Breck is such a sweetheart and he liked me and wanted to be friends, and that's what it was.
Well, I think what it is when Breck says something like that to you, what he's telling you is he thinks you're a good actor.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Thanks, Breck.
What he was saying is like your performance is so interesting and great that, usually, and that's how it usually happens. I mean, we have characters on the show like Kara G, like if he came in and did great performance and then it continues if the opportunity's there. So maybe he was, thinking at some point the opportunity would be there.
We can cut that if you want. I'm not bitter or anything.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
We don't mind talking shit about
it's just
Breck.
you'll never work with Breck again. That's that's all right.
I finally grew the beard he wanted. Like he was so concerned that I mean, Wes, you're a handsome guy, but I'm clearly younger than you. And Eric was supposed to be your contemporary. And so Breck met me. He's like, stop shaving right now before we shoot. And I have a little bit of hair, but like since then I've become a more. So you can tell Breck, I got it.
He got married and he had that massive flood of testosterone to go with his honeymoon.
Yeah, this right here. This is 2 days. This is just 2 days.
Yeah, he's a raging pit of testosterone now.
I don't think we said congratulations officially on the podcast, but congratulations, buddy. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.
And it's very exciting.
I think we got some wedding pictures to share with everybody, and we're excited for you and we're happy for you.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, and I got to meet your partner at the wrap party, so that was cool.
Too.
Yeah,
and that's a story connected to another thing, but like you are such a sweet guy, Ty. You are so nice. Like, yeah, backstage you asked me, "Oh, Jacob, what was your partner's name again?" And I was like, "It's Victor." And you were like, "Oh, don't Victor. I got to remember that." And I was like, "Wow, Ty is so sweet." And I always was trying to remember that when I see your Twitter personality, and I'm like, who is? This is not the same person, because I'd be afraid to approach him from 100 feet.
No, they actually are the same person. The difference is that if somebody is somebody that that I need to give a shit about, I'm very good at switching gears to give a shit about this person mode. Yeah. And let me add to that I'm a little bit face blind, and I have the world's worst memory for names.
Got it. Gotcha.
So if I run into somebody, I'm less likely to recognize them by seeing them, and I'm almost certain to forget their name. So I'm
right there with you, buddy. Victor has a huge family and a million friends, and I have a bad memory too. So I am always trying to remember names.
Oh, look at those handsome devils right there.
Look at those. Look at them. Look at him. I love this picture. He is so in love with me. Look at his face. I'm not even looking at him.
You're like aloof. You're like, yeah, I know I'm all that. And he's like, yeah, he's all infatuated. And you're like, oh, you should be infatuated. Yeah. Check this out.
We had these Chinese, Vietnamese. We had these Vietnamese lion dancers at the cocktail hour. And I don't know how many gay weddings with Vietnamese lion dancers you've been to, but this wedding was pretty lit. I'll tell you that.
I have been to a number of gay weddings, never with Vietnamese lion dancers or lion dancers. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So is Victor from Denver as well?
No, I'm from Denver. Victor's from Virginia.
Okay.
So the compromise was, let's do it where I'm from, because we already know that you have more friends and family than I do, so the guest list is going to be 2/3 of your people anyway.
Who's got the cowboy hat in the background?
The cowboy hat? I included that for you, Wes, because I thought you might like it. That is my father. His name is Dan Manhands Mundell. He is a true Colorado cowboy. Like, wow. I'm the first Mundell to never work on my family's ranch, but this man that you're looking at, he grew up first 30 years of his life roping dogies, digging post holes, fucking like wrestling mountain lions. I don't know, but
I can tell from this picture that man is a dead shot with a Winchester rifle.
Well, I could tell by his name, Manhands.
Dan Manhands Mundell.
Manhands Mundell.
Well, look at his hands, because he has two brothers, and when they grew up, he was the one who milked the family's cow for the family's milk, like that they would drink at the table. And he spent hours just milking cows, being like, what use is this going to do for my life? And later in his life, he was a massage therapist because he has these giant meaty mitts, if you look at his hands in that picture, because he milked cows for 10 years or whatever.
Does he still work on the farm?
No, he's retired, but he lives in that same community. It's like a town of 400 people in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but can I just say how happy it makes me to see this old Colorado cowboy at his son's gay wedding, and he looks proud to be there. That makes me so happy that is the world we live in now, at least in some parts.
He called me. He was nervous. He was like, "What do I wear?" And I said, "Dad, I need you. You got to go full cowboy. You got to represent the cowboy side of my heritage, because there's going to be lion dancing. Like, you need to go full Johnny Cash on me." And he said, heard. He wore some ostrich skin leather boots. He wore that like 10-gallon Stetson there. He represented the cowboy, the countryside in my background.
Did you grow up with property, like on land?
Yeah, I moved away to Denver when I was 7, but I lived the first 7 years of my life in this town of like 400 or 500 people, and it's Colorado land. It's not lush like Georgia. It's flat and it's yellow, and and the water is a dwindling resource, but it's the same concept.
So southern Colorado,
southeastern, over by Kansas.
Yeah.
Or northern New Mexico, as I would call it.
There you go.
Southern Colorado sounds way better than northern New Mexico.
No, but it's that same sort of arid. Like if you go to northern New Mexico and drive across the border into southern Colorado, you can't tell the difference. It's like very similar in.
It's not as flat as Oklahoma, but it's pretty close.
Well, what's our top 5 today, Joseph?
It is best series finales.
Now, Jacob, can you think, because you're going to put a list up, but we've already looked at the list, but can you think of any that we're missing that are special series to you that we're missing?
I have a weird argument for series finales, because the thing I like about TV is that they're not movies. And sometimes a series finale makes TV behave like a movie because they have to tie everything up in a bow. And this is not a popular opinion. I'm probably the only person in the galaxy who feels this way, but I really like the series finale, the unexpected series finale of Firefly. They only got 1 season and then they got canceled. And they had a season finale that turned into a series finale. And it ended with this like continuation that, this is our life in space. Life goes on. And we have a chosen family here. And it just didn't feel like it was burdened with that series finale burden of having to tie everything up in a bow of completion, because we all know that life continues. And so I like it for that reason, because series finales bum me out when they try to bring everything to a neat ending sometimes. And that movie that came out, Serenity, it just felt like it was lifting 3 times its weight by trying to close that show and perform the work of 2 more seasons that were meant to happen. So, disagree with me, go ahead. I like BoJack Horseman too.
Your vote is to add Firefly.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you made a compelling argument.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I can make a counterpoint to that. I think that in some series, like if you think about the Sopranos, like what they were trying to say was a part of that ongoing, but I think ultimately it's like, what is the show about and what is it trying to say? And sometimes you can't really complete those arcs and make your statement or make that point until you complete it, until you complete that thing. And if they stop in the middle of the journey, the work as a whole, it doesn't have as strong as a voice of what the statement is trying to make. So, but I can understand it. I mean, it really depends on the series. It really depends on how the show and what that works.
Speaking of which, and this is going to be an unpopular argument, I would add Sopranos to this list. I think
I like Sopranos too.
I think the last episode of Sopranos is brilliant. I'm going to go ahead and say I am the world's biggest Justified fan, and I thought the last episode of Justified was perfect. It was a perfect ending to that show. His conversation with Boyd Crowder in jail, the last conversation the two of them have is a perfect cap of that show.
Explain it. Why do you think it's perfect?
Have you watched Justified?
No.
Okay.
That's why I want you to explain it.
Well, so the show is about the collision between these two men who used to be friends. It's Raylan Givens, who is a marshal, and is Boyd Crowder, who is a lifelong criminal. But when they were teenagers, they worked together in the coal mines. And there's a scene in the very first episode where Raylan is trying to explain his feelings about Boyd, and all he can say is, "We dug coal together," as if that explains everything. Like it's almost like saying we went to war together. And so there's this complicated relationship that comes from that. And that's where the show starts, is him explaining his relationship to Boyd by saying, "We dug coal together." Then they go through 7 seasons of sometimes working together, more often than not butting heads. Boyd is genuinely a bad man. He's an outlaw. And then by the end of the show, Raylan has put Boyd in prison, and he's probably going to be there for the rest of his life. And then he does some stuff to take care of Boyd's family. The woman he's married to, the kid he doesn't know he has. Like he does some things to make sure that those people are going to be okay. And then he goes and visits Boyd in prison, and they just have this moment together where it's like, why are you helping me? Why are you so nice to me? And Raylan just says, "Well, we dug coal together." And that's the end of the show.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect encapsulation of the two of them. And the whole show is about the two of them and their diverging paths through life, and where they end up back together again. And it's just perfect. It's great writing. That was one of that show has had some of my favorite writing of any show. So it was just good writing at the end.
MASH was a phenomenon. In its last episode, like Joseph, I don't know if you can pull up the numbers, but the people that tune in for the finale of MASH is like unparalleled.
I think it was everyone on Earth.
It was everyone on Earth tuning in to the finale of MASH. MASH was such a just brilliantly written show, and so well performed, and there's so much about it. It's just an icon of television that I would put MASH on the list.
Yeah. Wow.
What is it?
122 million people.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think that's everyone who was alive at the time.
Yeah. In the final 6 minutes. So that's not even all episodes. It's just the final 6 minutes had 122 million people.
Oh yeah, that's the finale. It was a cultural phenomenon. It was a cultural moment. It was that was such an important show to TV and television. Yeah. And it elevated television in a lot of ways. And so I think we have to include MASH in there.
I agree. For the top. And my argument for The Sopranos, a lot of people were disappointed with the end of The Sopranos, but I actually think the end of The Sopranos was a work of genius. And I'm gonna make my justification for that. That after spending 7 seasons with Tony Soprano, we kind of decided he was the hero of the story. The viewer, we're like, in that last season where he's at war with Phil Leotardo and the New York Mafia, and we want him to win. We want Tony to win. We want our guy to win, right? But all along through the last couple of seasons, they are setting up that nobody wins. Tony says he tells Dr. Melfi, there's only 2 ways anybody leaves this life: in prison or dead. That's the only 2 ways anybody gets out. And we want Tony to win, so we keep forgetting that he said that. And there's a scene in the later show where he's talking to his brother-in-law, Bobby Bacalari, who says, "I bet when it happens, you don't even hear it." And Bobby is talking about when somebody comes and takes you out, you won't even hear the shot. And they show that multiple times in the show where where people are killed, where the people around them didn't see it coming and they're surprised by it. It's not cinematic. It's not action oriented. It's not a gunfight. It's just somebody walks up behind you and shoots you in the back of the head, right?
It's anticlimactic and it's anticlimactic. Ugly.
And they've been setting that up for seasons. For seasons they've been setting that idea up. And what the ending is telling you is, you thought Tony was the hero. He wasn't. He's a mobster. He's a bad man. He won this war with New York by killing a bunch of people. Yeah. And he's paying the price for that. You don't get to just walk away from your sins.
Yeah.
And I thought that last episode nailed that point perfect.
It's holding that dark mirror to our consciousness. And that's why that show was so brilliant. And so I agree with you that Sopranos belongs on that list.
And The Sopranos is the reason a show which is on the list here, The Shield, can exist, because The Sopranos opened the door for that kind of protagonist, and Vic Mackey ran through that door. Because if you watch The Shield, the very first episode of The Shield, we have this charismatic guy playing this tough police sergeant, Vic Mackey, and at the end of the first episode, he murders one of his own men because one of his own men is getting ready to turn state's evidence on his corruption. And he murders his own guy. And I'm like, this could not exist without The Sopranos. You couldn't, no network would have shown a show where our main character murders an innocent person in the pilot episode. That would never have happened before Tony Soprano.
It was essentially The Sopranos, but on the blue side.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
On the law enforcement side. I'm going to make a nostalgia argument for now. I love the finale of Newhart. And it was the first time I think I've ever saw that thing of waking up and then, and I don't know how many seasons it ran, but he wakes up and it was all a dream. And then you go back and you think about all the things that he went through and all the characters and all the stories and how many nights that we all stayed up with Newhart and watched Newhart. And at the end, it was all a dream. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up. Oh, sorry, I was doing a little Biggie, but
well, it was a gag, and you can get away with a gag in a comedy show, right? Because they tried that same gag in St. Elsewhere, and it's one of the most hated finales of all time.
Yeah, the thing is like it was. It is a gag. You're right, Ty. And normally a gag wouldn't work, but it's in line with the Newhart's comedy. Yeah. Yes. It's in line with him as a stand-up. It's aligned with the tone of the show, the writers of the show, their subversive comedy. And so it worked for that. And I think it's the only show that it would have worked for.
Yeah. And it was playing off our memory of his previous show. Because, the woman he wakes up in bed with is his wife from his previous show. So it's basically saying the character from the first Bob Newhart show is dreaming about the character in the second Bob Newhart show. So it's playing off of all of those things. And Bob Newhart was a brilliant comedian, a brilliant writer. He got away with it. It's not something you can usually get away with. Don't try this one at home, kids. He's a seasoned professional.
All right. So what's our number 5?
Well, and I know, talking about nostalgia, I know what a big Magnum PI fan you are.
Yeah.
And that was, at the time, that was a pretty groundbreaking series finale. At the time, it was pretty.
The first finale, because so there was a finale, and then they got finagled into doing another season, but they weren't supposed to do another season. So for my money, that Magnum PI finale is the finale, and I was going to, I went beat by beat for that whole show and on this podcast before. And how brilliant I thought it was. And it was the first time the good guy, the hero, murders in cold blood.
Yeah.
And it's also the conversion of Magnum, and he tips his toe into the anti-hero, because the anti-hero is somebody that does bad things for good reasons.
Yeah.
And he had a good reason. And so when, that moment when he says, "Did you see the sunrise this morning?" And the guy says, "Yeah." And he fucking blows him away because he'll never see the sunrise again. I mean, it was just poetic. It was beautiful. It was groundbreaking. Yeah. So I would,
I mean, it is a classic. I mean, Archer did an episode where they stole that moment from Magnum PI. Like it's like I think it's in our collective consciousness in TV land now, that amazing ending.
Did we forget about The Wire?
No, I was actually gonna mention The Wire as my
Honorable mention.
like if you get Magnum PI as your your number 5, my version of Magnum PI is The Wire. It is. I still argue that The Wire is the best written television show ever. It has not been supplanted in the decades since it came out. And the last episode so perfectly restated the premise of the show.
Mm-hmm.
That
talk about it. Give us a little breakdown of the last episode.
So the premise of the show is that there is a war on drugs because it bounces back and forth between the criminal underworld that is selling the drugs and the police officers who are tasked with stopping them. And it goes and the show always kind of splits time between those two groups. And the premise of the show is that the war on drugs is a giant waste of time and money and lives, and that it is a failed endeavor, that the more we fight, the more we just lose. And that is a premise that is stated over and over through the show. And that the only righteous thing a person can do is go through the fire, learn the lessons of the fire, and try to make a better person out of themselves. And the ending of The Wire, I think the two characters that embody that. So obviously McNulty is the star of the show, and what happens to him in the last episode is really important. But the two characters that embody the premise of the show are Bubbles and Dookie. That at the end of the show, Bubbles, after 5 seasons of being just a complete train wreck heroin addict who's lost friends, who's accidentally killed people he cared about, who's just every fucked up thing you can do as a junkie, he has done. And he gets to the end and he gets out of it. He finds a way out. He finds a way out of hell. And he doesn't win. He's not like a hero now. He's not like a big businessman. He doesn't bring down the drug empire. All he does is save himself, and that's all he can do. And find a way to make it up to the family that he hurt. Because the last scene of him is him eating dinner with his daughter or his sister, eating dinner with his sister and her daughter. And that's it. That's the only victory he gets, is that his family allows him back into their lives. He cleans himself up, and the rest of his life is going to be hard. He's a felon. He's a convicted criminal. It's going to be hard for him to get jobs. It's going to be hard for him to live in normal society. It's not a golden shiny ending for him. The ending is he got out of the shit, and that's all that he got. And then on the other side, you've got Dookie, who was the most picked on kid in the group of kids that we follow in The Wire, the one who had the worst life, and he's becoming the new Bubbles. We see him hanging out with the homeless people. We see him shooting heroin for the first time. And so the story of the show is this cycle will never end. The cycle will never end. The lives we throw away on the cycle will never end. The money we throw away on this will never end. It's just a meat grinder for people and money, and the last episode nails that.
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast and you're an aspiring writer, and particularly in TV, you can read the Wire's Bible online, and it's one of the most brilliantly written pitch documents I've ever read. And so many times when someone is pitching a story, or you read their pitch documents or kind of what they want to do, one of the things that's usually missing is like the meaning. Why are they doing it? What is it about? What are they trying to say with it? And The Wire is so eloquent in the Bible, in its philosophy about what it is, why it exists, what it's there for, what they're trying to say, and how worthless and futile that the drug war is, and that ultimately at its heart it's ripping this country apart, and the bodies are on the lower socioeconomic scale.
Yeah.
And it gives this beautiful, eloquent description of what the show is. And once you have a strong cornerstone, a foundation of what the truth is you're trying to tell and what the meaning is, then in those themes and those dynamic, it motivates every scene and every character and every moment, and then you bring it to a climax like the one on The Wire. That is a work of art. That is a show that really has a statement and that is meaning something. And if you pay attention and you listen to it the right way, you will become a more empathetic, better person for having seen it.
I agree. I agree with that entirely. As I said, I think it's the best written show ever in the history of television, and it actually achieves the thing it set out to achieve. And the final episode is a restatement of the premise to people who now understand the argument. So, when you give a speech, they say you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them what you told them. The Wire, the Wire is, it starts out, it tells you what it's going to tell you. And then it spends 5 seasons telling you that. And then the final episode is, here's what we just told you. But because you've watched 5 seasons of it, when they restate their premise at the end, now you understand it. You understand it in a way it's been proven. You understand it in a way you didn't before. And I think Wes just got food or something. Somebody just bring
you guys
food.
are geniuses, though.
No,
I'm not contributing much to this end of the conversation, but it's just because I love listening to experienced storytellers talk about why we do what we do.
Eh.
Sorry. I put you on too much of a platform, you big dicks.
Oh, well, thank you for calling me
big
a big
dicks.
Hey, Joseph, how close were the Patreon members? Oh, they have MASH on there.
Yeah, they put MASH at the top, but we didn't line up on any of that. Usually they get 2 or 3 of ours. But I think everybody agrees on MASH. That one's hard to not argue for.
Well, did we do the Shield or no? You just talked about it. Did that make the list?
I talked about the Shield, and I think the Shield is great, but I think the Shield is running through the door the Sopranos left open.
Yeah.
And I think the Sopranos
with Trump. Yeah.
The Sopranos wins if you have to pick between the two.
Yeah. Well, that was fun, Jacob. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming hanging out with us. We're so thankful for the work you did on the show. We're so thankful to have you. We're happy for you that you're married and you had a great wedding, and we hope to talk to you again.
Please tell Victor we both said hi.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm here for it. I not only am I on this episode, I'm a listener too. So it's a great show. I'll talk to you guys next episode when I'm listening to you in my car and I'm talking back at you when you're not responding.
Are you one of the 8? You mean?
Yeah.
Or do we get to 9?
C2E2. I ran into some Tie and That Guy people there, and they had buttons. They had fan number 1, fan number 2,
nice.
Fan number 3 buttons, and it went to 8. And I got one of them. I forget which. I've got that button around there.
So you know which number you are. You have a button.
Yeah.
Officially, I am one of the 8.
Nice.
Yeah. Can I tell one last short little story? It might not make it in or not.
Do it.
I went to New York Comic-Con, and I didn't go as an artistic guest. Like, I applied to all the Comic-Cons. I was like, hey, I was on this show that's kind of a big deal right now. Would you like to have me? And they were all like, nah, you're not important enough. And that's fine. I'm not in denial about that. But then I hooked up with the Expanse geeks, which is this huge 15,000 international group of fans on Facebook. And they hacked it with me. I got my plane tickets, they got me a room, and I went to New York Comic-Con, and we bought a photo session with Steven and Wes. And
no, I remember. I was like,
the friends that I was with, they went in and said, hey, we have a surprise. And then I jumped around the corner and I said, what's up? And I got to surprise you guys that way. And that was a lot of fun.
I saw the pictures. Yeah. A bunch of people posted pictures about that. That was very cool.
And I also just want to send a shout out to Abraxas Precipice, which is the live role playing game of the Expanse fans.
I saw you did that.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I've had so much fun engaging with fans since I was on those 4 episodes. Expanse fans are real people, and John Boltino runs this live role playing game show of the Expanse RPG, and I got to play a character with them for 4 episodes. So active fan base, good people. Shout out.
Did you enjoy the game?
Yeah, it was so much fun. He's playing the game on the plot line of the books, not the show. So, like, for all the little differences, he knows them and he's staying true to them.
Cool.
You know, Steven and I, we kind of partner up. He's in New York, I'm in Atlanta, so it's kind of easy when we do these Comic-Cons or whatever. But People are, it's a fucking blast for us because the people that, it's the Expanse is like one of those things where if you have the Expanse in common, then you probably like so many of the other things. And
Yeah.
so you automatically have easy conversations. And there's just a kindness and a supportiveness that Expanse that's unlike anything else that I've been a part of. And I mean, look, there's a reason why Ty and I are doing this podcast, continuing to do this podcast, is because we enjoy it so much. And I get such a thrill when people come up and they say, "Hey, I'm one of the listeners. I'm number 4 or whatever." Give the number or whatever, and it's like it's so cool to do that thing.
Well, and when I saw you and Steven in New York, I said to him, "Man, like if I was the part of a kitchen drama, it wouldn't be like sci-fi fans are the best." And he corrected me. He went, "Expanse fans are the best." And I was I was like, bet, because that is true. Good, they are good people.
Sci-fi fans tend to be passionate fans. They do. So yeah, if you can get in good with the fan base for your show, yeah, those people are incredibly supportive.
And I'm here for it. I love fan engagement. Like I said before, I'm a nerd who got to do a nerd thing. So Expanse fans, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and I love to engage with people. I'll give your dad a birthday shout out if you want. Like I'm here. So reach out because I'm all about it.
Cool, man.
Well, Jacob, thank you. Speaking of the Expanse fans, thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we hope to see you soon. Please like and subscribe and do all the things to help us support the show and keep going and feed Joseph's family.
Yeah, and send Jacob a lot of requests for birthday shout outs to your dad.
Yeah, as many
Just flood him with those.
As many as you send, he'll do. So go and send those out.
Oh fuck.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.
Welcome back to Ty and That Guy.